Every Sunday, MAGA Republicans carry out their weekly tradition of defending whatever deranged nonsense and backing up whatever false claims Donald Trump pushed that week. And there were so many this week, a staggering amount of false claims and horrible and disgraceful actions taken by Donald Trump that they had to send in the big guns, and by that they had to send in a shameless liar in Senator Tom Cotton, who is one of the worst Donald Trump stooges out there. We always see him appearing on the Sunday shows because he is always happy to sell his soul on behalf of Donald Trump, and that is exactly what happened today. But he was shut up in doing so for pushing these lies on behalf of Donald Trump, and we are going to get into all of that because it was a brutal takedown of one of the worst MAGA Republicans out there. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It really goes a long way in supporting this community that we are building. Now let's get into this interview to see Tom Cotton have his lies shut down.
Cotton of Arkansas. Senator Cotton, welcome back to Meet the Press. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on, Kristen.
Let's start off by talking about Hurricane Helene. We know that former President Trump has made, quite frankly, a series of baseless claims, including that the Biden administration is intentionally withholding aid from areas where Republicans live, also saying that FEMA funds are being redirected to migrants. Both those claims have been debunked. They're false. Here's what Deanne Criswell, the FEMA administrator, had to say about it. Take a look.
This level of misinformation creates this scenario where they won't even come to us. They won't even register. And I need people to register so they can get what they're eligible for through our programs.
Senator, what do you say to that criticism that Mr. Trump is confusing people at a very time when they need help the most?
Well, I don't think he's confusing anyone. I think the administration did get caught flat-footed here, and that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have proven to be overmatched by events again. If you hear from Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, who's very close to this, is monitoring it on the ground, Georgia's response, he said that the administration's response has been lackluster. I think there's an obvious difference between what happened in western North Carolina, northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee than the normal kind of hurricane impact we see. Most of the time, hurricanes are hitting on the coast, hitting by definition flat land. They can cause devastating damage. But within some reasonable period of time, the waters recede, linemen can come in, trucks can come in, bring supplies. If you look at the geography of where Helene did the most damage, it's in the mountains where you have small, narrow valleys. Even once the storm moved on and there's no more rain, oftentimes these places only have one way in and out. So that's a very different challenge than what you see on coastal areas. And I think the administration from the very beginning should have been deploying military assets necessary, specifically helicopters, to get in there. It took them days to do that. There's hundreds of military helicopters within flying distance of this area. That should have happened from the very beginning.
But Senator, just a couple of points there. The governors themselves has said that they are satisfied with the federal response. Brian Kemp on Monday said, we got what we needed. The Democratic governor of North Carolina said the state is grateful for the support. We know that North Carolina got $27 million to Western North Carolina specifically. There's no doubt that there are challenges in this recovery effort, but I'm asking you about the misinformation that the former president is spreading. Here's what the Charlotte Observer editorial board wrote. They wrote, quote, former President Donald Trump has politicized the situation at every turn, spreading falsehoods and conspiracies that fracture the community instead of bringing it together. Do you...
Of course, Donald Trump's lies about the Biden-Harris response to those communities affected by Hurricane Helene are disgraceful on their face. Donald Trump lying about the federal government's response is absolutely terrible. But what is even worse is that there are families, there are people in those communities who don't know how to get the relief they need or are unwilling to because of what Donald Trump has said. He is trying to convince them to not take the aid from the Biden-Harris administration, to not get the resources they need by lying about what is available. Donald Trump is actively hurting the communities he's pretending to care about with his lies for his own political gain. Now, of course, Tom Cotton won't say that, even though he knows it's the truth. He won't say that Donald Trump's stop in Georgia earlier this week was just a campaign stunt, and he actually hurt that community by taking away resources so he could take a couple of pictures and try to make himself look better. But of course, that is always what he does. It's the only thing he cares about. But it is just so gross that he is hurting affected communities just to boost himself politically, and that Republicans are backing up those lies. And of course, that is what they have to do to be Trump stooges. And we saw more of that from Tom Cotton in this clip we're about to check out when he refused to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, but he was called out. So let's take a look.
Different. I want to talk about one of the big moments this week from the vice presidential debate. We just played it in the open when Senator J.D. Vance refused to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. I want to put this question to you, Senator, just to put this to rest. Can you say definitively here and now that Donald Trump did lose the 2020 election?
Kristen, Joe Biden was elected president in 2020. It was an unfair election in many ways. I mean, you had states that were changing their election practices or election laws, sometimes in violation of their constitution. You had networks combining with big tech to suppress what we now know to be a truthful story about Hunter Biden's laptop and the evidence that it exposed about Biden family corruption. So obviously Joe Biden was elected president. We know that in part because—
But did Trump lose?
Joe Biden was elected, Kristen. There's a process by which we elect presidents. There's votes in November. You have an electoral college vote. You certify the election, and then you have the inauguration. Joe Biden was elected president. Everything has gone to hell in a handbasket as a result of it.
As you know, though, I mean, it has been stated that this was one of the most secure elections in U.S. history. But do you just not want to say that Trump lost? Why not just say the simple—
Kristen,
if Biden is president, can you just simply say Trump lost?
Joe Biden was elected president in 2020. That's why we have runaway inflation. That's why we have more than 10 million illegals in this country. And to go back to the point about the 2020 election, it was very irregular. You had networks, to include this networks, conspiring with big tech to suppress evidence of Biden family corruption. You had Democratic states and cities like Pennsylvania, like Philadelphia, changing their election practices on the fly. That's one reason why President Trump and the Republican National Committee is so focused on election integrity in this election, to make sure that Democrats aren't doing things like they're trying to do in Pennsylvania, counting absentee and mail-in ballots that don't have dates or that have the wrong date.
And there's no proof that that happened. And again, just to be clear, as I said initially, Trump did take his case to court more than 60 times, didn't win those cases.
He quite literally will not say the word lost because he knows his boss, Donald Trump, is such a petulant child that he just couldn't deal with that. It would break his little heart if he has one. It would hurt his little fifis. Donald Trump just can't handle recognizing that he lost the 2020 election. And so you have MAGA stooges like Tom Cotton being equally as childish, refusing to say the word, refusing to admit that Donald Trump lost, refusing to do anything but lie. And we saw some of those lies from Donald Trump last night. And I want to take a look at this clip specifically because it proves just what a child he is.
Now, we have so many others, and I won't do it because we have to really get out of here before it gets too cold for people. But I love it much better because this one teleprompter, not that I use the teleprompters too much. Isn't it nice to have a president that doesn't need a teleprompter? No, we don't need it. But this one was right smack in the sun. Great job back there, fellas.
How crazed do you have to be to say that you don't need a teleprompter when you've been reading off of 2 teleprompters all night? That would be like me saying, yeah, I don't really like to speak into a mic for my show. I don't really like that. I don't enjoy mics. I just don't like it. It is the most ridiculous thing I have ever seen. And he continues to do that. And then Tom Cotton continues to lie on his behalf. And we have to continue to call out those lies, not just of Donald Trump, but the rest of the MAGA stooges in Congress. And that is why I'm so excited today to talk about a Democrat running to flip a very winnable red district. And that Democrat is Jonathan Nez.
Whether you're in Pinal County, in Tuba City where I was born, or here in Prescott, water is a worry. I'm Jonathan Nez. As president of the Navajo Nation, I work with the Trump administration to deliver greater water access for northern Arizona, including rural communities beyond tribal lands. Now, I'm running for Congress because rural Arizona deserves more. I approve this message for rural Arizona because it's time to secure our water and lower prices for our families.
We need to help Democrats who are fighting up and down the ballot because we can flip this MAGA majority in the House blue. They are the least effective Congress in history, and Democrat Jonathan Nez is running against MAGA Republican Eli Crane to do exactly that. Eli Crane also refuses to accept the results of the 2020 election. What a shock, a MAGA Republican attacking democracy.
Open borders, drugs pouring into our communities, handouts for illegal aliens. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have put us all in danger. Endorsed by Trump, Eli Crane is fighting back. A Navy SEAL and conservative warrior, Eli Crane is taking on the swamp and fighting to finish the wall. That's why President Trump is endorsing Eli Crane.
I'm Eli Crane, and I approve this message because we must stop the invasion at our southern border.
But Nez, on the other hand, is the former president of the Navajo Nation, who is always fighting on behalf of his community. We need more of that, and so I'm going to leave a link to donate to his campaign in the top comment of this video and in the description. And if you can chip in, it'll go a long way. And until next time, I'll see you soon.